Hey, what's up, Jsixxx? I figured this might be a bit quicker and easier for us to digest the concepts that need to get changed rather than me trying to type 15 lines in Discord and making it difficult to follow the exact steps, along with you attempting to figure out what's going on under the hood that's causing some of these issues and what causes them to go right. So hopefully I can make this a quick video for you to digest and follow along with to solve this tic-tac puzzle. That's a terrible joke. Anyway, this is what your code currently probably looks like. At least this is what you push to GitHub. You might have changed some things in your current code directory, and hopefully you can follow along with what I'm doing here and fix what you're currently looking at. So if we just swap back to, if we swap back to the lab here, this is what you got working on, right? What's happening currently is that in this top class selector, you're setting a manual height and width, and it's overriding what this width and height are doing in row for us. That's what's causing these to appear and behave strangely compared to the rest of these, because they have their own individual height and width compared to these guys, so they now fall out of line from the set of rules. So the first thing I'm going to do is just delete that height and width like so, clean up that extra space we now have left going, and we're going to go back to your code and refresh, and now see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, it looks like a grid now, but what the problem is, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 aren't being ordered correctly. And I see that you're using this row selector, and what that's selecting is this row, and this row, and the rows are getting the rule. So what's happening is 1, 2, 3 are a row, they get floated to the left. 4, 5, 6 are a row, they get floated next to that. And 7, 8, 9 are a row, and they get floated next to that. We don't want that. We want each row to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and not the current way they're doing. So what's actually happening here is part 2 of this lab. It says float left all of the divs inside the rows, not the rows themselves. Also add a height and width of 100 pixels. So what I'm going to do in your CSS is a height and width of 100 pixels. So I'm going to change this 400 to 100, excuse me. And this selector just selects the rows. It doesn't select the divs inside the rows. So if you would Google something like CSS select children elements of parent or something like that, you would find this syntax for that looks like this. Each row has 3 divs inside of it, right? Like this. This row has 4, 5, 6. This row has 7, 8, 9, and the first row up here has 1, 2, 3. So to select those, oh my goodness, here we go. To select those, what we do is instead of this, we say row div. Now check this out. Watch what happens when I highlight this. Element class row ... div. So now this rule is no longer being applied to the row, it's being applied to each cell within the row. Interesting, right? Very interesting. So with just this little change, let's see what happens to your code. So now we have this, it completely changed from those columns to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way across the screen. That's a step in the right direction. We have made tangible progress towards our goal. And figuring out the next part actually is fairly simple. It's what happens in the next one. Add a clear fix for all the rows. Okay, so when you float divs, you need to let the browser know when floating shouldn't be applied, meaning float here, stop, float here, stop, and then float here, stop. And then we have something we can apply these quote-unquote stops to. So this clear both is what we need. Example property for the clear fix, clear both. So I'm going to copy clear both, and we're never going to think about anything else. Right now we're just hopping into here. So right now all these row divs have the float property of left. And every time a row finishes, so this row will float all these divs left. And then we want that to break it on this next row and then reapply the float left. So in our CSS, just like you had a second ago, we're going to say, hey, select every row, which is our break, and clear the rules. So what this is going to do is it's going to go in here into your HTML and go, okay, if there's any float rules, clear them. Then Anything inside a row, float left. Then at this row, clear the rules, and then float these left. Then at this row, clear the rule of clear both, and then float these left. Now with just this little change, watch what happens. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just as you'd expect as your tic-tac-toe board to be without having to actually alter it in HTML. Dope. That's awesome. That's like I haven't done a whole lot to your code other than change a selector or two around and that's it, and copy and paste some code. Now to center this guy on screen, you'll have to do something specific. So going back to the lab here, it says, hint, margin can be used to horizontally center, use 0 and auto. And so center and set the width of the row divs. So you want to set them to 302 pixels. Now he accounts for that if you did the borders correctly, which currently yours are almost set up that way, but not quite. So because he does 302 pixels to account for the extra pixels that each one has, you have more. So the 302 will actually break your code. So let's check this out. If we do, actually you have the code written up here. So we're going to move this margin auto because it's not doing anything for us inside these. We're going to move it here like this. We're going to say margin. Remember he said 0 and auto. And that's, if you look up how to do a horizontal center in CSS, it will say margin 0 space auto. So I believe that the 0 is for the y-axis and the second one is for the x-axis, meaning don't space it automatically up and down, but space it automatically left and right. But that only works if this guy is a specified distance. So like kind of like if you're measuring the distance to where to hang a painting, you have to measure the length of the painting so you know what to say on the right side and what to say on the left side. If your wall is 100, it's a huge wall. If your wall is 100 feet long and you have a 20-foot painting, you know 20 feet is going to be in the middle, which means what's it called? Oh, this is so bad. I'm so bad at math, considering I'm a code and developer. If your painting is 20 feet, you have 80 feet on both sides, aka 40 on the left, 40 on the right, because you have to account for the 20 in the middle to make the 100 total. So that's the same thing that happens here. Us adding margin 0 auto doesn't space at center because it doesn't know how much to apply on both sides of this game board. So what happens now is say, hey, let's add a width of for now, let's just do 350 pixels. You're not going to want to leave it at 350 because it's going to break your styling in a minute. But refresh, and now it appears to be centered. Now the lab does say 302 pixels. But see, if what happens is if we do 302 pixels, it's going to break. And that's because your borders are accounting for those extra pixels. Because you have coinciding borders, they include extra thickness that breaks this code. So if you prop this up to 350, like so, it fixes this, and you want to change it to 302 later for styling. You're going to have to fix your borders, which are almost correct. But now that your board is correctly oriented, I think you'll be able to fix these borders, and you can set this back to 302 pixels and have it all look correct. So hopefully this gets you going, and let me know if you need another video or some more explanation, as I'll be happy to help you. So happy coding, and I'll talk to you soon.